The other team I think you could look at as a backslider in the Western Conference would be the Clippers. I don't know where you stand on them, but no Paul
Well, let's get
George.
into that. Let's get
Yeah.
into that here. That's the next topic I wanted to get into, like the teams that could backslide across the NBA. You mentioned the Clippers, and I'm with you there. Paul George, whatever you think of him, he did play 74 games last year, and he still is a guy that you can count on to get you a bucket. Now, if you're the Clippers, in my opinion, your best case scenario is like Kawhi gives you 60 to 70 games, James Harden gives you 60 to 70 games and increases his usage rate closer to the level we're used to seeing James Harden at. All the poo-poo platter of guys that they signed this offseason from Derek Jones on down, they wind up fitting in and making it happen. Like, best case scenario to me with the Clippers is the exact same thing with the Lakers. Like, they're in that play-in mix because as great as Kawhi is, I'm sorry, I can't count on him to give you that kind of consistency, durability during a regular season. James Harden, I still think he can play at a high level, but probably the level we saw him playing at last year is where he is as a player. They are unquestionably a team that I could see best case kind of winding up in that play-in range. Worst case, out of the play-in altogether, in that like 11-12 spot in the Western Conference.
100%, because one of Paul George's biggest assets for the Clippers was if Kawhi misses an extended stretch of time, he can be the number one guy. Now, if Kawhi goes out, it's James Harden's team, right? I think James Harden's going to have a huge role. He's probably going to do pretty well for the people who have him in fantasy basketball because he's going to have a lot of touches. And I think he can still get numbers, maybe not as efficiently as he used to, but he's going to put up big scoring, big assist numbers. But the idea of James Harden and a bunch of role players is your backup strategy when Kawhi inevitably misses 10, 15, 20 games in the Western Conference like you're describing. And that sounds like a sub 500 team in those stretches, right? So that makes me really nervous. The Kawhi thing also, I share your skepticism in general. Did we not talk enough about what a weird summer this guy had? He comes out into the playoffs. They're better without him. He's, trying to make it work on his bad knee. They had managed it all season long to try to get him right for the playoffs. He made them worse when he was on the court during the playoffs. So they pull the plug on that. They lose in the first round. He shows up at USA basketball camp like not that long later, 2 months later. He thinks he's on the team. 4 days later, they send him home. And it's a real he said about, okay, well, what's going on? Why isn't Kawhi Leonard on the team? They brought in Derek White. I mean, Derek White, I like him. I think he's underrated, but he's not been on Kawhi Leonard's level, right? But I think he was actually more valuable to Team USA than Kawhi Leonard probably would have been based on what we saw in the playoffs, right? So that's pretty strange. So I have no idea what to expect from Kawhi Leonard this season. And I also just question their whole strategy of like, oh, we're building towards this brand new building, right? The Intuit Dome. Billions of dollars they put into this thing. I don't think there's any question it will be the best basketball arena in the NBA, right? But the Clippers have had a fan problem. They've had an environment problem. They're trying to take some market share from the Lakers. That's why they want their own building. And you get rid of the two most popular players in Paul George and Russell Westbrook. Those are the two guys the fans actually cheered for. The fans have no connection with Kawhi because he doesn't do any sort of outreach. He's not open with the media. Like, he's just kind of a blank slate. And James Harden, is still kind of working his way, into that community in terms of that fan base and showing them what he can do. So just a really weird, strange timing for this all to unfold. And, they do have a couple guys, Terrence Mann, that the fans are going to be excited about. I do think Derek Jones Jr. was a nice, like, Moneyball type play after you lose Paul George, right? But it's just a very strange way to, like, introduce this new building. It's like the building's going to have all the bells and whistles, but the roster has no bells and whistles. What's going on?
Yeah, I think Derek Jones Jr. is a good pickup for them if Kawhi and James Harden are healthy all season long, because you can kind of put him in that dunker spot and get you some easy buckets. Maybe he can start. He can make some threes for you. He's a pretty good defender overall. So yeah, he's someone you can slide in. But if you have to count on him to be more than what he's been, at least last year, you're going to be in trouble, right? Like, he's a good auxiliary player, complementary player off of Kawhi and James Harden, but more than that, you really can't expect. Look, we both know that, a year ago this time, the plan was to have all these guys under contract going into that Intuit Dome because they wanted to sell tickets. They wanted to have the most star-studded roster in LA. I thought they screwed up the Paul George negotiations, and I say that because they wound up offering him basically exactly what he wanted at the very end, but that was kind of too little too late, with that deal. So, and look, I get it too, because spending money isn't the solution it used to be, because not because of the payroll tax, but because of all the traps the NBA has put in to block teams from building that way. So I get it in that sense, but they're going into that building as what looks like a very average team with the potential, with a predictable injury or two, from being a below average team. And I think that's problematic for the Clippers. Well, warmer, sunnier days are calling. Fuel up for them with Factor's no prep, no mess meals. Meet your wellness goals in time for summer thanks to the menu of chef-crafted meals with options like Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, and Keto. Factor's fresh, never frozen meals are dietitian approved and ready to eat in just 2 minutes. So no matter how busy you are, you'll always have time to enjoy nutritious, great tasting meals. Make today the day you kickstart your new healthy routine. What are you waiting for? With 35 different meals and more than 60 add-ons to choose from every week, you'll always have new flavors to explore. Crush your wellness goals this month with dietitian-approved meals and ingredients you can trust. Make your day delicious from breakfast to dessert and stay fueled with easy, nutritious options. Enjoy effortless support for your lifestyle. Choose from 6 menu preferences to help you manage calories, maximize protein intake, avoid meat, or simply eat well balanced. Head to factormeals.com/openfloor50 and use code openfloor50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month. That's code openfloor50 at factormeals.com/openfloor50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month while your subscription is active. The team that I look at as maybe taking a slide, not out of the playoffs, but slipping from the upper half of the conference to maybe the lower half of the conference, is the Denver Nuggets. Because Denver has been slowly hemorrhaging talent over the last couple of years. A year ago, it was Bruce Brown and it was Jeff Green. This year, it's Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, who I think we'd both agree is a much bigger loss than Bruce Brown or Jeff Green. KCP fit like a glove with that Denver team. He was a spot-up shooter. He didn't have to run plays for him. He can defend multiple positions. I mean, he was the perfect fit playing opposite Jokic, Murray, and Michael Porter Jr. Now he's gone, and you're going to have to turn to some guys that, I don't know if they've proven they can be that yet. Now, Christian Brown, I'm probably the highest on in that group. I think he's ready to step in, and he'll probably be the starter in that mix. But then you're talking about Peyton Watson. You're talking about Julian Strawther. Like, those two guys have been good in spurts. I'm just wondering, is this the year where Jokic's greatness and Murray's all-star level play isn't enough to win them as many close games as they're probably going to be in this year? Is the KCP loss not the straw that broke the camel's back, because they are still going to be good, because Nikola Jokic, until proven otherwise, is still the best player in the NBA. Jamal Murray is still an all-star caliber guard. Michael Porter Jr. can still fill it up when he's healthy and out there on the floor. So they're still going to be very good. But they had I'm looking at it right now, 57 wins last year. Minnesota was at 56. The Clippers at 51. Is this the year that they fall into that 50-ish win range that puts them, instead of 1-2 in the Western Conference, at like 5-6 in the Western Conference?
Well, I agree. It might not be the straw that broke the camel's back, but it could be a straw that prevents them from overcoming something like a Jamal Murray injury that they had a couple of years ago, where they're able to kind of fill in around the edges and Jokic is able to drag them through it because he's got so many of these veteran role players who can kind of step in and play solid minutes. I don't know what to make of Jamal Murray. I mean, he was terrible in the Olympics, and I'm not trying to pile on him. He just did not look like Jamal Murray. Now, he had some real flashes in the playoffs, but he had some real struggle moments in that series they lost to Minnesota, where had he been better, they probably win that series, right? And so I actually bring, coming into this season, the only guy on the whole team I trust is Jokic, and that's a tricky spot to be in. I mean, when we're talking about championship contenders, usually you're trusting 3, 4, 5 guys. Another thing I would say about Denver, I just don't trust the messaging from their front office these last couple of years. That, first it was, we're trying to make sure that we can build kind of a long-running dynasty. We don't want to focus too much on the short term. We want to have a very sustainable plan. We keep hearing after guys leave, well, we offered them comparable money in the negotiations. They just chose to go elsewhere. I'll be honest, once that happens 2, 3, 4 times with key guys, I just don't believe it. I start to look around and saying, you're not spending money. You're not taking care of your players on a championship caliber level. And I also don't understand why you're looking at a long-term viewpoint when your best player, the best player in the league, is smack in the middle of his prime. If there was ever a chance to take a short-term viewpoint, this would be the moment, right? Where you're trying to milk a second title, maybe a third title out of it. And instead, they've brought in all of these young guys who not only do you not trust, Chris, it really doesn't seem like Michael Malone trusts him either because he doesn't play these guys, right?
He loves veterans.
Yeah. He loves the vets. And, I also think he gets it. Like, he loves winning too. And we could tell during the playoffs with his surly attitude, he hates losing. I think if any of those young guys could truly influence wins to losses last season, they would have gotten, more playing time in the postseason. And it just really never shook out that way. So I have questions about their depth. I have absolutely no doubt that Jokic is going to be able to pull them to more wins than we would probably expect, but they set a really high bar last year, and they're just not as good of a team.
Yeah, and like KCP, to bring it back to him, was the most valuable 10-point per game guy that you could find in the NBA because he'd average 10 a game, but he did it over 76 games each over the last couple of seasons. Shot 42% from 3 2 years ago, 40% from 3 last year. Like, this was the very definition of reliable role player. And look, that Malone would make him happy from time to time, running some plays, a little dribble handoff here or there, and he'd get him, some opportunities that way. But he was just fine. Camped out in the corner, camped out on the wings, playing off Murray, playing off Jokic. Are you going to get the same kind of production out of Christian Brown and Peyton Watson and Julian Strawther? That is the biggest question right now for the Denver Nuggets because Jokic is still going to drag them to 50 wins. Murray's still good enough to be the number 2 guy on that team. MPJ, provided he can stay healthy, is still a very solid scorer. Kind of think he should be coming off the bench, but it's a separate conversation. You've got guys there, but can those young guys step up? That's going to be the story of the Nuggets season. If they can fill in some of these blanks that have been opened up with Bruce Brown's exit, with Jeff Green's exit, and now KCP's exit, then Denver can keep this championship window open. If they can't, you're probably looking at another second round exit, conference finals maybe exit, because I think those losses are that significant for Denver. That's kind of my 2 cents.
Yeah, I'm with you. And look at some of the other teams that are competing for a championship. You don't have questions about can young guys step up for the Celtics. Young guys are lucky to get any minutes, right? Like Peyton Pritchard's lucky to get in for 20 seconds so he can, he could huck up a half-court shot and change the finals, right? I mean, Minnesota, they're not relying on 21-year-old guys. Like, their rotation's pretty stuck. Now, obviously, Oklahoma City's young, right? But those guys all had their roles last year. They all proved they could play. I mean, Oklahoma City has way more young talent than Denver has. So that's why it puts them in a unique situation among those teams we view as the top-tier teams.
And if you're the Celtics, too, you got to look at the Nuggets and say, that might be our future, right? That's why the urgency should be there this year and maybe next year, because whoever the new owner is, they're not going to want to spend $500 million a year on the team. It's just not going to happen. I'm sorry. So, this could be the last year of Drew Holiday and Derek White pairing together in the backcourt, having the luxury of Sam Hauser, Peyton Pritchard, and others on that bench. Like this, the way this cap is constructed, what's happening to Denver is going to happen to all the top tier teams out there. So get your wins while you can.